Hey guys and girls, on this video I will be talking about the fourth episode of the third season of Star Trek Discovery. It's called Forget Me Not, so I will be going into spoilers. I've heard some mixed reactions to this online. Some people actually quite down on this episode, think it's like the weakest so far of this season. I'm more positive. I think it's pretty much on point, has quite an interesting plot. I think, again, does some good world building. I mean, maybe it's the weakest so far. I'm not sure. I would have to think about that. But I still thought it was pretty good. I do have one particular complaint, which is that because the Adira character takes like the sort of focus, like the kind of main plot in it, and we sort of go into the character's past, and it's revealed obviously that the I forget the term they use, but the sort of original host of her, then it's basically her ex-boyfriend who she saw tragically die. And I mean, this whole episode is about Adira getting access to her memories again, and obviously the Starfleet want it because, you know, they need to get the message from their like their comrade sort of thing, he's been like a host of Adira and various things, but it's obviously a character episode for Adira as well. So I guess I probably have a complaint there, the fact that we were only introduced to Adira in the previous episode, and now we're getting this big episode for her where you're basically getting flashbacks into her past and the relationship with her boyfriend, which is very sort of tender and sweet, and we see various things like that made them close and almost tragic, like lovers in a sense, because of him tragically dying so young. And she accepted his gift, basically. She thought it was like a fitting way to keep his memory alive and to keep his work alive, so she accepted, and that's how she became a host. And we see the various characters, and it goes through her sort of memories. Now, I think the visual stuff in this episode and the stuff we see with Adira there is really good. I mean, I don't know if it's anything new or special, but that stuff was pretty impressive. I think you can see the effects doing a good job. There was something quite sort of dreamlike and angelic about the process. We see all these wires with Adira and her going into the water. I thought visually that stuff worked quite well, and I do like Adira a fair bit. It's just the fact that, as I said, we don't know her that well, and you're getting all this quite heavy personal backstory, and it's sort of the stuff you might get with a character who you've known a bit longer, and it obviously takes up a lot of the episode. It's sort of heavily weighted in Adira and Michael, who goes with her to this planet, because they basically get intel that this planet where like Federation members reside is the best place to go and get their answers, to try and get access to Adira's like memories. And it's quite a familiar Star Trek style plot where they go to this planet and you've got almost a very kind of hippie like existence or ideas going on, but it's like these particular like Federation bodies who, from the off, they frown on Adira. They think she's like a fraud or she doesn't belong there. But there's like one member in particular who actually has a soft spot, and behind the backs of the others actually has to or decide, sorry, to help them out, to show them like the I don't know whatever you want to call it, the special water, if you like, in the cave, basically. So he actually helps them out, but then there's this kind of battle where, because they originally tell Michael and Adira to get off the planet and they're not welcome, and Michael doesn't accept this. She takes things into her own hands, and they go like looking around the planet anyway, and then they're confronted by a few of like the Federation members, and Michael takes no prisoners. Boom, she takes them out. No. Although they're not actually dead, like she just stuns them, and I do actually like the line when Dira says to her, "Well, that's not Federation protocol or Starfleet protocol," and Michael's like, "No, it's not," and I like that as a get like a kick-ass sort of character line from Michael. So yeah, it sort of builds to this whole thing, and as I said, we get this whole backstory, and obviously Adira, like her memories, and I think the visual stuff does work. The struggle that you see her to try and access these memories and these painful sort of memories. But I mean, obviously this is where someone might say, yeah, it's a little bit soapy, a little bit sort of cliche, but certainly the visuals of her in the cave and some of the stuff with the flashbacks I thought worked pretty well. But I can get the complaint that it's a bit on the nose and maybe a little bit cheesy. Now, one complaint I had at the end of the episode was that we end with Adira on her own, and we get, actually I will just say a point before that, which is a part I did like, because I think it's obviously important that Michael is told to go along with her. Like Saru says, you're actually the perfect person to go with her to the planet. And I like, actually, there's this scene of confrontation between Adira and Michael where Adira says, you don't care about me, basically, you just want to get access to the memories for Tull, that's the name I was trying to remember before, to get the message from Tull. And Michael says, but that, it's not true. I mean, it's important for all of us to have access to our memories, to have an identity, to have just memories of the past, is what she's basically saying. I can't remember how she phrases it, but it's a good moment because it's kind of core Star Trek type. I think it speaks to what Star Trek is in a way, as like a franchise, as a universe. That kind of morality and an idea of character and knowing yourself, and that. I think in that moment when Michael says it, you do believe her. You think, yeah, she's not just being selfish and using Adira for her own purposes. And they get the message from Tull, which they say is an important message, and it's a message of hope and all this sort of stuff. But at the end of the episode, yeah, I was a bit concerned because Adira's like left on her own, and then she sees her boyfriend. Her boyfriend appears, and kind of says, well, yeah, are you going to be sticking around? And sort of indicates at least that he is. And I'm not sure if I'm that keen on that to be having. I mean, maybe it's just one of those endings which is kind of saying, well, he'll always be with her sort of thing. But we might not actually see him in the episodes, in which case that's fair enough. I just don't really want a plot where Adira's boyfriend keeps popping up and is commenting on stuff, and you're having that sort of, kind of ghost type thing. I think it could distract really too much from the main sort of plot. But anyway, there's that stuff. Actually, one of the things to say is that I think the episode opens with another like voiceover type montage, and a different perspective. It's actually the perspective of the Doctor, and he's kind of, sort of filling us in on what's going on, and he's kind of like just like talking about things, and yeah, that was interesting. The fact that then we got a different perspective to open the episode, and I think one thing that this episode actually digs into, which I like, is that it's like covering sort of trauma and memories, and how people on a ship or at war, or whatever you want to say, how they respond and react to a traumatic event, and sort of gathering their emotions and feelings. And I think that's why we have the Doctor kind of narrating this start, because he's talking about the fallout from the time travel dump and stuff, and the fact that obviously they're coming to terms with this idea that they're now kind of working in this new dimension where they potentially might not see their loved ones back in the other era again, and stuff like that. So it's good to get a different perspective, and the Doctor's perspective, and I like the actor as well. But actually what happens in this episode is you get this other sort of subplot where I think Saru's still trying to kind of adapt to being the captain, and still trying to kind of lift the crew's spirits in a way. So it's sort of a comedy plot in some ways, where they're obviously like he puts on like a dinner for them, like a banquet, and their emotions kind of start flooding out, where like certain resentments start coming out, and there's sort of an edge to it. And of course Georgilio, in a way, not having much attachment to them and just being her own thing, she kind of kicks back and enjoys the wine, sort of thing. But there's certain things that are coming out. It actually gets dark with one particularly like awkward line, because Kayla still hasn't been like herself since like the whole thing, and yeah, she just has this really dark line about toasting to like cleaning up like the I think it's Paul's like sort of blood, but his skull tissues or whatever the line is. It's very dark, but she just comes out with it, and you might think, well, would she say that? But in any case, I mean, obviously something's been bubbling with her under the surface for a while, and there's also this idea that she feels very like taken for granted. And Paul almost has a snapback and says, well, if it wasn't for my sort of, my science and stuff, we couldn't do the time jump, basically. And she's obviously getting quite defensive because she's a pilot and she's part of the process. But yeah, and then her girlfriend's obviously sticking up for her. But there's various like tensions that come out at this dinner. But then of course by the end they sort of come together. Paul comes and says, sorry, I mean, I should have appreciated you more. But I think it's even though it takes a backseat to the other plot, I think it's quite a nice plot, because it kind of gets into this idea of trauma and kind of coming to terms with things, and the fallout. I guess it's a good way to sell what's happened and the whole time jump thing. And there's a subplot with Tilly where she comes to Paul and she kind of suggests, well, why don't we change the interface? Why don't we change it to black matter, sort of thing? And he's very defensive, and he's not in the mood for new ideas. He sort of dismisses it and says, no, it's too complicated. There's too many potential problems. and that's a thing where Tilly feels like slated by him, but then later on he comes back to Tilly and says, it's not a bad idea. It's something we can at least look into. So I think there is a message in this episode about kind of communication and about dealing with traumatic events and just learning to accept different points of views and different kind of feelings and difference in general, which obviously is one of the big themes of Star Trek as a show, as I said, as a franchise, and I think it was just this thing with Saru trying to bring them all together, and then there's quite a nice uplifting sort of thing where, because they've now got like this new technology because they're in another like dimension and this operating system, and as a result they can now like they have their own like sort of like cinema where they can show like these silent movies. So they're showing like, I think it's a Buster Keaton film at some point, and it's just this sweet moment where the crew are like laughing and enjoying themselves, and it's something to bring them together. But there's almost something quite fitting about that, the fact that it's something very traditional, nostalgic, something from the past, like a silent movie, which has brought them together in this very different sort of future. So I thought that was a good scene and a nice touch. So that's the episode. I mean, mostly I'm positive. One or two maybe small complaints, but I enjoyed this episode a fair bit, and so far, I mean, obviously it could still go downhill, but so far I think this is on course to be the best season of the show so far. I think that there is a progression there, but we'll see what happens. It's still only 4 episodes in, so I don't want to get too overly confident, but it was another good one for me, if maybe not the best of the 4 episodes, but I thought there was a lot to like about it still. So yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments below on this 4th episode. How are you enjoying the new series so far? Like and subscribe if you are new to the channel. You can also ding the bell, as they say on YouTube. It should notify you of new videos when they go online, or if I'm doing a live stream, it should also notify you. And I'll be back soon with the next review for Star Trek Discovery. I'm also doing His Dark Materials, the new series of that, which just started this week on BBC. So if you're interested in that show, then you can check out my first review now. But thanks for listening, and goodbye.